Thanks a lot. Thank you for hosting me, by the way. First, let me start with this way. And sorry if I happen to not use English in a proper way. This is what to do. That English is my second language. The other thing is that I think I get a flu out of New York. So I'm not sure that it's going to affect or not, but let's see. Well, I would like to thank first of all to Gülden for introducing me with Red Quill Books. I'm going to tell you the short story about the previous publishing house that we kind of submitted our synopsis and the whole book. And I'm happy to be hosted by CSRC. What I think is that with this book we did something new. Of course, all the books contain new information and knowledge, but in terms of the approach that we happen to adopt in the book, we kind of tried to fill in the blanks on literature on Turkish politics, especially in times of the AKPs, just the development parties. Would you be comfortable with me saying AKP or JDP? Which one is? I can use both of them.
Either one.
Okay, AKP then, AKP. When we first submitted, we were really inexperienced, by the way, in starting to submit the book. And we submitted to a certain mainstream publishing house in North America. And, you know, it went through the review process. And in one of the reviewer comments, one of the reviewers said no. And he or she, I don't know, but it was kind of a male discourse, but I'm not sure because the women can also adopt male discourse. So he or she noted that, well, you shouldn't publish this book because you can't sell it because, for example, I won't let my students read this book because it's a neo-Marxist book. So we said that, hey, this is good. We did the right things. we managed it, you know. Anyway, then we understood that it was the wrong publishing house, you know. We were kind of inexperienced, so we were searching for the appropriate one, and Gülden helped me actually to get introduced to the Red Quill Books, which I'm really happy. Better than nothing, you know, the delay is not important, so it's going to be published and it's going to be read, I hope, with by the interested readers. Well, what is new? Let me start with the numbers, actually. I collected some statistical information, some numbers, actually, for my lecture, which was different in Left Forum, but I think that it is relevant to understand what has been going on in Turkey for a decade or something. The new political party represents itself as a conservative democratic party, or sometimes it has been defined as a liberal Muslim party, political party, or liberal Islam. It's not Islamist, but liberal Muslim political party, or liberal conservative political party. And in abroad, actually, it has been kind of appreciated until recently for articulating Islamist stance in daily life with liberal individual rights and liberties discourse. So it has been appreciated to offer an example that has not been seen in the Muslim world, or in the Islamic world. And when you call the AKP or JDP, when you call JDP as an authoritarian political party, you get immediate reaction both among the party sympathizers and also among the mainstream population, among the common population, common citizens, and also from abroad. That you'll easily get reaction, and on the basis of you're being too radical, perhaps, or too prejudiced. But when you look at the numbers, in terms of actually the violation of the liberal individual rights and liberties, like the violation of freedom of thought and speech, you get a different picture from all these assessments and critics. In terms of freedom of expression, association, and mobility, since 2009, we have more than 3,000 people arrested. These arrests are really important to look at. In 2010, 7,100 were taken under custody, and 1,599 were arrested. 280 were subjected to maltreatment and torture under custody. 209 were beaten in public demonstrations by security forces. You know, public demonstrations in Turkey happen to witness really violent acts by the security forces, depending on the color of the stance of the activists there. 28 political activities were banned, and they were mainly either feminist, Marxist feminist, of course, leftist, or pro-Kurdish activities. As of 2012, 104 journalists are imprisoned. This is not that in 2012, 104 journalists were simultaneously at the same time arrested, but these arrests of the journalists, academic students, mainly from the opposition, have been going on since 2007 or something, and by 2012 we have 104 journalists. For example, in 2010 there were only 30 journalists who were arrested, and now in 2012 we have 104. I should note an exception here. There are 2 journalists who have been in jail for about a year or something that they were released. After I gathered these numbers, this means that before 5 days or something they were released, and that was kind of applauded actually. And when these people are imprisoned, you know, they have to wait there in order to have the decision of whether they are guilty or not. So, and cases. The decisions, the taking of the decisions might take time, really long times. For example, we have people waiting for about 5 years or something for the courts to reach a decision about whether they are guilty or not. Today, at all, we have a significant number of journalists, academics, and university students imprisoned on the allegation of, this is the interesting part, they are allegedly connected with terrorism. So any opposition actually sounds as if it is connected or is suspected to be connected with terroristic activities or terroristic organizations. The main common evident feature of these figures is that they have been involved in oppositionary activities in one way or another. But as I said beforehand, mainly the leftists or the anti-American circles, or the pro-Kurdish rights activists, or the politicians are being arrested or are being accused of terroristic connections. So these numbers aside, the AKP came to power with the claim that it will try to ensure that there would be social peace in the country, and it will try to ensure that politics will run on the basis of the priority of stability and consensus, emphasizing that it will be open to dialogue from any flank in the society or in political activity. When it came to power in the country, there have been really discomfort among what we call the Kemalists. I'm going to tell who they are, among the statist Kemalists and among the left-flank nationalists, leftist nationalists, that this party, having grown out of an Islamist political party, would have kind of hidden incentives to establish Sharia or to kind of articulate Islamic principles, Islamic rules and regulations into the legal structure in Turkey. So the main suspicion was in that fashion. Looked from outside, the AKP displayed a really interesting case in terms of its policy preferences and policy implementation. It did not openly embrace Islamist principles, but the party spokespersons and the party documents included Muslim morality, included Muslim morality as a basic ingredient in both the speech and also in the documents and in policy preferences. Looked from outside, the way these Muslim priorities, principles were included in the party documents was appreciated because it was not Islamist, the way was not Islamist, and the party would say, okay, to have a really intense is the right word, to have an ongoing relation with the West and would not stand against Western values. And so it could balance its liberal preferences, the liberal preferences, with its Muslim preferences. And this has been so far viewed as a new step in understanding modernization in non-Western contexts and mainly in Islamic contexts or in Muslim majority populations. So in the modernization literature, the dichotomy between the East and the West as a dichotomy between Muslimness or Islamness, Islamic identity and Western liberal democratic identity was carried on in the analysis of what the party has been doing. So it was mainly a cultural analysis. And of course, it's being cultural aside, that analysis, that dichotomy, that dichotomization has always been problematic in itself. Well, we try to understand the Islamic nature of this political party because it was really different from its predecessor, the Islamist political party from within which it came out. We try to understand its difference, and also we try to understand how it could articulate this past of Islamist political activism and the present of Muslim, I don't use Islamist, but Muslim political stance based on Muslimhood with certain neoliberal necessities which have so long been in opposition to each other, and how it could manipulate Islam and Muslimhood in legitimizing its neoliberal performance. Well, this party has been really successful in neoliberal performance, so it has a credit, but I'm telling this ironically, it has a credit on Western eyes in the Western neoliberal world. So that was our meaning, but we did not want to stay at a certain level, saying that, well, these people are using Islam as a leverage in trying to establish or consolidate their neoliberal interests and their neoliberal tendencies. We try to understand actually how this togetherness between Muslimhood and neoliberalism is reflected in active politics and real politics through looking at social policy realm, through looking at gender policy realm, through looking at the global scale to the relation that the party has so far formed with the West, and it has been through mainly either World Bank or IMF or European Union, though it halted. The last one has been halted for some time, through European Union, and also what kind of a vision in foreign policy it introduced to Turkish politics, Turkish foreign policy, also how it is related with the domestic politics in Turkey. We try to understand the transformation actually that has been going on Turkish land since a decade or something, at the state level and at the society level, and how this converges. We try to look at the embourgeoisement of the Islamic circles, the long time called the Anatolian Tigers factor actually, the provincial class, the provincial artisan classes turning into, or commercial classes turning into the urbanite Islamic and bourgeois. We try to look at that. We try to look at how this party could forge itself an image over an emphasis on dialogue with civil societal organizations, and at the same time continue with its authoritarian policies, mainly directed to civil societal activism. We try to understand this. I hope we managed to understand a lot of things, but of course there are lacks. Of course, we raised a lot of questions, so it needs a follow-up, actually, in terms of a new volume, covering the points that we couldn't cover. So the book is composed of 10 chapters plus an intro and a conclusion. And in each chapter, we tried to concentrate on the topics that I just said, I just noted. Well, out of this, the basic argument of the book in all the chapters, though it is not that explicitly stated in all the chapters, but in the conclusion we try to make it explicit. We say that our basic argument is that yes, Turkey has been witnessing a transformation, structural transformation since a decade, but this is nothing as a coming out of the blue with the emergence of the Justice and Development Party as the victorious party in 2002 elections, and this is not, this has a history behind, and it starts with 1980 military coup d'etat. And actually, neoliberalism has been tried to introduce on Turkish lands in late 1970s, and 1980 military coup d'etat kind of eased that introduction. And the foundations of this sort of government had been laid down. Nobody planned this, but had been laid down back in the 1980s. So this is one argument. The other is, so 1980 is a historical juncture. Is taken as is considered as a historical juncture in this book. It was the most brutal, actually, most brutal military intervention or military coup d'etat in Turkey. Turkey is accustomed to live with military coup d'etats, but it was the most brutal one. And you know, that statistical information actually should be compared with the statistical information of the arrests, violations of human rights, actually. Violations of human rights in the 3-year-long military regime after 1980. The Justice and Development Party actually, in its discourse, opposes the 1980 military coup d'etat, opposes the dominance of military in Turkish politics with reference to liberal democratic values. So there is a lot of going on in terms of contradictory stances, all gathered in just one political party. It stands against that. It kind of questions the early Republican era that is in 1920s, where this military dominance was, where the nation state, Turkish nation state was founded, and through military cadres, so where this military dominance was founded. It comes against that on the basis of not the exclusion of Islamists from the political and social spheres, on the basis of individual rights and freedoms, on the basis of individual rights and liberties, on the basis of Kurdish rights and liberties. So it kind of adopts a liberal democratic stance in terms of its opposition to the previous establishment, but while ensuring its own establishment, its authoritarianism comes to the surface. So our argument comes, we say that the Justice and Development Party is a model example for understanding the silencing of violence of neoliberalism through exclusionary policies, through discriminatory policies, through, on Turkish lands, on Muslim majority lands actually, through Islamic priorities. So it's a successful example, by the way, because it does not fall into Islamist politics as its predecessors had done. But it kind of manipulates them, it kind of adopts them, but this is nothing like, you know, having the Islamist politics there and using it and leaving it aside. When it does so, it transforms Islamism itself. So a transformation is going on in the society and in the state structure in that fashion. The whole legal frame is being amended, and new laws are being launched in the name of liberal democratic values, in the name of liquidifying military dominance in Turkish politics, but at the same time, within the same legal amendment process, you see the almost irreversible establishment of the structural guarantees for the evolution of neoliberalism. So the party uses the discourse of liberal rights and liberal individual rights and liberties, or democratic discourse, in trying to kind of institutionalize neoliberalism in an irreversible fashion. So we were kind of concerned about this. Well, there are 10 contributors, actually 11 contributors, because one article is co-authored. 11 contributors, and 50% of the contributors are political activists at the same time, either leftists or feminists or both. So we were concerned about it in our daily lives too, so we tried to detail this. So what do we say in detail? Would I bore you, just going by chapter? Or?
Go ahead.
In terms of state transformation, we linked that with societal transformation, but not in terms of social policy or gender policy, but in terms of the embourgeoisement of the Islamic elite, the emergence of the bourgeois Islamic elite. We tried to look at that. We linked it with the way civil societalization was reconfigured in terms of marketization. So long as you're in the market, it's okay. You can be civil societal. You can be active in civil societal sphere, but so long as you abide also with the morality that is dominant in the society, that is the Muslim morality. We try to document it. We try to look at state transformation in terms of putting an end, with the aim of putting an end to class-based politics. This works in two styles, on two tracks. On the one hand, you cannot raise class-based politics as a factor that should be considered, both in your political discussions or research activities. So when you involve in that, it doesn't count. That's it. It works all over. It's not the political party or the government. All the mediums kind of turn deaf ears to what you say in terms of class-based politics. We try to understand how this works. This has been working through personalistic politics, actually, which is not unknown to neoliberal practice as far as I know. So what has been going in terms of state transformation is, first looking at the legal amendments, is the individualization of justice, actually, and the individualization of security at technical legal level. On the other hand, you see the personalization of politics. So Erdoganization, we call it, Erdoganization of the transformation, Erdoganization of the state. Erdogan is the prime minister, the head of the political party. Sorry for that. I started to talk and I assumed that. Sorry. So it is a symbolic word. It can be Josharization too, my nature. So, but this is nothing new. This has been started, but the Justice and Development Party has been most successful in performing it, in consolidating it. Then we look at how Islamic bourgeois has so far survived and has so far strengthened its place in the society through civil societal activism plus state support. So we looked at that and how they view actually democratic politics, how they view democratization, how they view, for example, non-military, undemocratic practices. Because in Turkey, whenever we talk about authoritarianism, the first thing that comes to mind, I think this is the image that we export to the quote-unquote West. I have a problem with that term, but the West is military. Authoritarian politics kind of has been identified traditionally with military being in politics. So through through the embourgeoisment of Islamic elite, we tried to understand how authoritarianism has been legitimized through the society. At the same time, simultaneously rejecting military politics, or military politics. And what we observed is that though the military cadres, that has been a positive development, by the way, though the military cadres has become more and less effective in Turkish politics, the society has been militarized to an extent that should not be tolerated. or to an extent they should not be bypassed. So it is really a serious militarization process. This is to do with neoliberalism because it started with the legalization of individuals having weapons. So it started with that, and it started with defense industry. So what you see is defense industry taking out of the monopoly of the military and coming into civilian hands, and this is called demilitarization. But you see there militarization throughout society. So that is just one, really small example. The first three chapters are actually theoretical chapters, talking about the first four chapters. Are actually theoretical chapters talking about the theoretical term in real politics, but talking about the theoretical roots that lie behind the turn in state and society transformation. The second part, the three chapters in the second part, take from there, do not leave the theory, but focus on offer microanalysis. One talks about social policy and basically concentrates on labor policies. Sorry. The other one talks about gender policies. The Just and Development Party, it is one of the gender policy sphere is one of the spheres that kind of puzzles most an observer, because on the one hand you see the rising effect of women's rights organizations in politics in terms of combating with violence against women, and mainly domestic violence. On the other, you see the government being open to negotiation with the women's rights organizations on certain issues concerning women's emancipation, as compared to the other governments, in previous governments. But on the other hand, you see a new mode of patriarchy that kind of restricts the issues that you can talk about in terms of women's emancipation, and that kind of makes you inactive, that disables you to go further, to trespass the borders drawn by the government itself. So it is not a women-friendly government. It is an anti-feminist government. It says so. This is not our naming, but it calls itself as an anti-feminist government. It tells the feminists, including me, it calls us as marginal people and as demoralizing people. But on the other hand, it says okay to certain women's rights organizations for negotiation. So it is really puzzling. If you have questions, I can go through that too, and the other chapters too. And we have a chapter, another one that puzzles most, is about the citizenization project under the Just and Development Party rule. Among the legal amendments that have been done, you see citizenship law as one of the most conspicuous ones. It has been applauded by the European Union. So, as compared to the previous one, it is more liberal. It recognizes different ethnic identities. That is why it is more liberal. When talking about ethnic identities, other ethnic identities, Turkishness is an ethnic identity. This has been refused by the previous establishment, but this is so. We have also non-Muslims, so Turkishness is equated with Muslims, by the way. I should also tell that. We have non-Muslim minorities, and we have non-Turkish non-minorities in terms of ethnic identity. But the previous establishment before 1980, before the Just and Development Party government, refused to recognize other ethnic identities. So this government actually shocked most of the people by recognizing, for example, Kurdish identity, by legalizing the speech in Turkish, instruction in Turkish, and also broadcast in Turkish, but under state auspices. Sorry, you
yeah. Said Turkish.
No, it's Kurdish, sorry. It is Kurdish. It happens. Freudian lapsus or something, I guess. So that citizenship law is really important for us to look at critically. And the contributor of that chapter really did a good job in critically analyzing and seeing the, in fact, unseen perhaps in the details that this citizenship is also a Turkish Muslim citizenship. This citizenship talks about actually the rights and liberties of different ethnic identities, people from different ethnic identities, but it does not talk about these rights and liberties as on an equal footing with the Turkish identity, which can be which is expected, yeah. And the last three chapters deal with actually the international dimension, the global, the JDP's, the legitimation of the JDP's power through international attachments, and one looks at the EU, Turkey's rather problematic relations and kind of confusing relations with the European Union since the 1960s, early 1960s. And I love the title of that chapter, I should tell. It calls it the relation as a neoliberal love affair. So, but of course, you know, filled in with a lot of cheatings and so on and so forth. Yeah, but it is really interesting, and the title is really interesting, and inside you can see this, you know, kind of flippy continuity in the relationship. So they cannot be with each other, but they cannot be without each other too. They go on all the time, but it never comes to a point, sort of thing. EU for the JDP government at first then, when it first came to power, was a means actually to prove that it is not like the other Middle Eastern Islamic governments. And also it was for the common citizens in Turkey, for the people like me actually, secular, non-Kemalist perhaps. I didn't talk about Kemalism. I'm going to do that. I'm sorry for this. I always prepare this and I don't look at them. That is the problem. Anyway, for the people like me, to ensure that, to ensure us, look, do not get afraid. We're not Islamic. We're not threatening your lifestyles. This has been the motto of the political party in its first term in government between 2002 and 2007. Yeah, 2007. And we are for European Union membership of Turkey, which is liberal democratic. So just be calm. We're not going to bring in Sharia or something, Islamic rule or something. And also it tried to calm down the then still powerful military cadres too, because you know that country is accustomed to military interventions in one way or another, and not that less people support military interventions. So military as an institution has been trusted in Turkish society until recently. Has been a trusted institution until recently. So it was also trying to calm down that powerful group of actors, the military cadres, the top military cadres. Of course, you know, this was not without a cost. Actually, it is not a cost on the part of the Just and Development Party. It was a cost in terms of the society. So it said okay to any kind of neoliberal policy that the European Union advised, recommended, asked for the continuity of the EU accession process, and the EU in its reports applauded the government for its real strong performance in terms of the rules and regulations adopted for the free running of the market. So that was, but at certain times, you know, EU is not a monolithic structure, so at certain times, when the Christian Democrats did not want Turkey in terms of its Muslim character, the Turkishness Muslimhood came out as the dominant factor in the response of the party. So it was a flippy relation. The other chapter specifically concerns the World Bank and IMF, how they have been active, these institutions have been active in Turkey since the late 1970s, and how this activity has been turned into dominance throughout the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and how under the Just and Development Party, the governments turned out to internalize the dependency of Turkey over actually over the Western neoliberal world. And the last chapter, I think it summarizes, it kind of gathers all the arguments in the EU chapter and the World Bank and IMF chapter, the international dependency chapter, talks about different characteristics, features of the GDP's foreign policy, and cites three of them as the major dominant factors. Pragmatism, of course, you need it as neoliberals, not you, the GDP needs it. Neo-Ottomanism, in terms of a kind of a nostalgic approach to the ex-Ottoman territories in the Middle East and North Africa, and also throughout the Islamic world, and Middle Easternization. Middle Easternization, acting as the big brother in the Middle East, and also acting as a representative and the model, as the acceptable representative of the Middle Eastern states in the non-Middle Eastern world. So all these chapters are kind of with a critical approach, with an interrogative stance. I do not say that there are no critical analysis of the Just and Development Party, no volumes on Just and Development Party analyzing the record of the political party in government with a critical stance. Yes, there are. But we tried to introduce something new in the literature by first not getting colonized, let me put it in that way, because we call it as the colonization, getting colonized with this dichotomy between the East and the West, democratic and authoritarian, liberal democratic and authoritarian, military versus civilian, politics axis, because the other critical stances are introduced from within these dichotomies and thus reproduced what is actually problematic in understanding this party and this government that has been in rule for a decade or something, with increasing votes. That is the other shocking part. I can talk on 4 hours. I didn't talk about Kemalism. Should I? Are you bored with me? What this party came out as against, what it opposed actually. It opposed the Kemalist establishment, named after Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the founder of the Republic. Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, Atatürk means his last name. He adopted after 1934, I guess so, after the law on last names in Turkey. Atatürk means the father of the Turks. So Mustafa Kemal Atatürk was was among the military cadres in Ottoman Empire, and he fought the national independence war, led the national independence war. He founded the republic with the close circle of the military cadres. He kind of tried to oust Islam from the social and political sphere through actual French means, by kind of putting Islamic activities under the auspices of the state, so in order to try it, but at the same time he banned, and his party banned and executed the underground Islamic activities. The Just and Development Party stance. He also tried to, he and his party, the Republicans actually, tried to create a homogeneous nation on the basis of Turkish identity. They were Turks. Not all of them were Turks, but they were Turks. But it is a little bit confusing, because among them we see the racist, among the cadres trying to organize the society around the homogeneous national identity in terms of Turkishness. You have racists, you have fascists, you have nationalists claiming for territorial identity, and you have nationals saying that, they overlap sometimes, you have nationals saying that, well, let's organize under Turkishness, but let not Turkishness be an ethnic identity. But Turks were ethnic groups in Ottoman times and also in early Republican years. So this was kind of a failed project, perhaps, I'm not sure. But so Just in the Development Party did something new by kind of not acting anti-Kemalist in terms of Islamic rights and liberties or freedom of conscience, read and believe, but in terms of trying to integrate its policies related to Kurdish people in Turkey with its anti-Kemalist stance. But of course, in doing so, it could not escape from its authoritarian preferences, its authoritarian natures. When doing so, it excluded the Kurdish political activists. So it had its own plans, so it kind of either excluded or marginalized or oppressed or suppressed the Kurdish political activists, including the legal parliamentary pro-Kurdish political party. Sorry for this additional note, but I kept on saying that I should talk about Kemalism, but I couldn't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.